Only Boost Mobile.
Boost Mobile?
We'll give you a free year of service.
Free year?
When you buy a new 5G phone.
New 5G phone?
Enough.
But I'm your hype man. When you purchase an eligible device, you get $25 off every month for 12 months with credits totaling 1 year of free service. Taxes extra for the device and service plan. Online only.
This is Paige DeSorbo from Giggly Squad. Boost Mobile gives you the same network coverage, speed, and service you're used to, just at a more affordable price. Why pay more if you don't have to? Offering reliable nationwide coverage backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Love your service or get your money back, no questions asked. Visit your nearest Boost Mobile store or head to boostmobile.com to learn more. After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers who cancel within 30 days of activation will have Boost service fees refunded. Activation fees, if applicable, and phone payments will not be refunded.
Hi there, and welcome again to the Explaining History podcast. And today we're kind of continuing with the theme that we looked at yesterday, which you can loosely describe as the kind of enigmas of the British left. And I'm looking at the collected political writings, posthumously collected political writings of Tony Benn in a new anthology of his speeches and essays titled "The Most Dangerous Man in Britain," which I think probably was something the Daily Mail called him. To those that are unfamiliar with Tony Benn was one of the most significant figures in post-war British political history. He is in many ways to the left what Margaret Thatcher was to the right, very polarizing figure. One who you could certainly describe as being a conviction politician, somebody who was very talented in articulating his position and presenting his argument well, and taking the kind of complexities of socialist thought and making them accessible. He was he gravitated towards the left throughout the 1970s. He served under Harold Wilson, where he became progressively more radical towards the end of the 60s, when I think the various kind of crises of Britain's kind of post-war stagnation begins to catch up with it, and unpleasant choices in the eyes of the Wilson and then later Callaghan governments have to be made. And Benn's instinct was to say, well, why is it that the poorest need to make the most compromises? Why is it that the burden of what follows during this period falls on the shoulders of the poor? He was a devout Christian, and he saw kind of the there being no kind of contradiction between Marxist and Christian thought. He believed that Christianity in its rawest form was a form of radicalism, and there's a kind of a great deal to kind of commend that argument as a kind of and historically British radicalism from the Levellers onwards, and perhaps even earlier, has a strong basis in Christian belief. So let's dive into his essay. He writes this. He wrote this essay in 1979. This was just following the collapse of the post-war consensus, and I believe following the defeat of the Labour Party in 1979. Tony Benn writes, Marxism has, from the earliest days, always been openly accepted by the Labour Party as one of the many sources of inspiration within the labour movement, along with, though much less influential than, Christian socialism, Fabianism, Owenism, trade unionism, and even radical liberalism. The party has, of course, consistently opposed the admission of those who belong to other parties calling themselves socialists, where these parties have put up candidates to oppose official Labour candidates in local or parliamentary elections. This has automatically ruled out the admission of members of the Communist Party, which, in addition to its disqualification on these grounds, has for a long period condoned violations of human rights in the USSR and Eastern Europe under Stalin and others, and even supported the use of Soviet troops against Hungary and other independent countries in the past. So, much as with every other European country that had a Communist Party, the Communist Party of Great Britain was Stalinist throughout the 20th century. That it split ultimately, or kind of hemorrhaged supporters in 1956. People like the historian E.P. Thompson left the Communist Party following Stalin's invasion of, oh no, I beg your pardon, Khrushchev's invasion of Hungary, and the suppression of the Hungarian democratic movement. The Labour Party has in Britain has always had this complicated and often antagonistic relationship with other parties of the left. The Labour Party has mainly been the kind of the sort of dialogue between the Fabians, who are, to sum up them very very quickly, are kind of Labour moderates, gradualists, believe in the gradual grinding down of class and inequality. The union movement, which again the Labour Party has always had a very complicated relationship with. It's been the contention mainly of the trade unions that they created the Labour Party, and when the Labour Party has come into power, Labour governments have normally rejected the idea that they are there solely to serve the unions. They say we're a party of the nation. We serve the entirety of Britain's spectrum of class and sectional interests, and we're not here to simply do what the unions demand. Of course, the Labour Party has been intensely relaxed with doing in recent years what the super rich demand. So here's how we sort of see under the Blair years this kind of gradual shift towards triangulation, the idea that the Labour Party is there to essentially politically triangulate, to convince ordinary voters that they are doing radical things, where in reality they are kind of doing far fewer of those things than they sort of indicate, and perhaps even none at all. All that's required, writes Tony Benn, by way of political allegiance from party members or paid officials is that they should accept the policy and the programme of the Labour Party and thus commit themselves to advancing socialism through parliamentary democracy. This is a position many are determined to maintain. The Labour Party has been and is always and always has been, is and always will be an extremely tolerant and undogmatic party. Again, this is written in 1979. Deriving much strength and popular support from its refusal to impose a rigid doctrine upon its members. The influences that lead individuals to embrace democratic socialism have always been left to individual conscience, and there are no inquisitions to root out Marxists any more than there are to root out Catholics, atheists, or followers of Adam Smith, Sigmund Freud, Leon Trotsky, or Milton Friedman. It is, however, important that the Labour Party's attitude towards Marxism should be restated at a time when the Tory Party and the Tory press are campaigning hard to persuade the British people that the Labour Party is dominated by Marxists, which it is not. Now, this is a common refrain by the right-wing press. Today in Great Britain, if you're listening from Great Britain today, put your don your shades and look at the Daily Mail headline, which literally compares Britain today under a very right-wing, extremely right-wing Labour government to North Korea, and sort of suggests that Angela Rayner, who is no doubt on manoeuvres to replace Keir Starmer, the kind of incompetent incumbent of 10 Downing Street, who is a kind of a working class female successful politician, one of the few working class politicians in the on the Labour front bench, comparing her to some sort of Madame Mao sort of character or something, some kind of madness like that. But the British press has done this for over a century. They have compared the moderate gradualist Labour Party, which is often nowhere near radical enough, to the Bolsheviks or to the Stalin or what have you. And it's ridiculous hyperbole that sometimes works with the British public. But the idea that that democracy will collapse and instead there'll be some sort of Marxist tyranny and gulags and all the other kind of stuff is a beloved trope of the British right-wing press. That the Labour Party is dominated by Marxists, which it is not. That Marxism and communism are synonymous, which they are not. And that there is a dominant group growing within the Labour Party which really believes in violent revolution and the suppression of democratic rights and the introduction of a one-party state, which there is not. To be honest with you, whether you're talking about 1979 or 2025 or 1956, if you believe in the violent overthrow of democracy and the imposition of a Marxist-Leninist state, being in the Labour Party is about the worst place for you to be. It's the most unfertile ground for revolutionary thinking you can imagine, and that's kind of why the Labour Party exists, really. Perhaps the classic text is to be found in The Labour Party in Perspective, written by Clement Attlee in 1937. Attlee described the Marxist contributions to the party in these words: The ideas which called the pioneers to the service of the socialist movement were very varied. They were not the followers of a single gospel of one prophet. They did not accept one revelation as inspired. It is this which distinguishes the British socialist movement from many of those on the continent. Predominantly, writes Tony Benn, the parties on the continent have been built on the writings of Karl Marx, the German Social Democratic Party, as a classic example. Around his teachings, the movement has grown. Different interpretations have been put upon his creed. In some countries, other powerful influences have been at work, and the characters of his apostles and the circumstances of the countries to which they belong have necessarily caused differences in the method pursued by particular parties. But they have this in common, that they were formed as definite socialist movements, inspired by the word revealed to Marx. In Britain, the history of the movement is entirely different. Widely diffused as his inheritance has been, the number of those who accepted Marxism as a creed has always been small. The number of those who have entered the socialist movement as a direct result of its teaching has been but a fraction of the whole. One must seek the inspiration of the majority of British socialists in other directions. There were, however, three organisations which have been the main contributors to the spread of socialist thought in the country, and to the creation of a political socialist movement. All three have their own characteristics. The first was the Social Democratic Federation, founded by Henry Hyndman. It was based definitely on the teaching of Karl Marx. In 1943, Harold Lasky wrote a pamphlet under the title Marx and Today. In it, Lasky, who was a member of the National Executive Committee of the party and its chairman 2 years later, identified himself as a Marxist. What do we mean today by a Marxist basis? Wrote Lasky. 60 years after Marx's death, it would be foolish to pretend that Marxism is a body of sacred formulas, the mere incantation of which charms away our danger. Marx himself would have been the first to admit the immense addition to our knowledge since he wrote the urgency of taking full account of what the new knowledge implies in the fullest perspective we can give it. And later still in his pamphlet, says Tony Benn, Lasky wrote, the preservation of individuality, its extension, indeed, its ability to affirm its own essence, is I believe, the central aim of any ethic that Marxism can endorse. Over the years, a very large number of members of the party, including some of our most distinguished leaders, have been drawn to socialism by study of Marx. Leaving aside entirely those who would have left the Communist Party in order to join the Labour Party, there are many others whose Marxism led them to the Labour Party. Herbert Morrison was one of the most famous. In a recent biography, Morrison's early experience and opinions were set out quite clearly. Morrison put a revolutionary Marxist line, liberally spiced with quotations from Marx, whose first volume of Capital he brought with him to meetings. Indeed, he took a copy of Capital almost everywhere. Morrison being one of the Labour members of Churchill's war cabinet, a significant figure in wartime and post-war economic planning. Thus, Morrison's biographers describe his early radical days in 1908, but they go on to tell how he became dissatisfied with the Social Democratic Federation as a vehicle to achieve his objective. He first began to move away from it for tactical reasons. He wanted it to affiliate to the Labour Party so as to permeate it with Marxist ideas. Herbert Morrison believed, therefore, that Marxists should join the Labour Party in order to influence its policy. But, like many others before him and since, his views were later tempered by the experience of working within the mainstream of the movement. So, Marxists that join the Labour Party, many of them, their ideas become less radical over time, and their views moderate in essence. Michael Furt, in his biography of Aneurin Bevan, describes a dinner in which she attended with Nye Bevan in Soho in 1952, held at a restaurant where Karl Marx had once found sanctuary. At the beginning of the proceedings, we drank a toast to the great man's memory, and there was no sign then, or at any other time, or for that matter, in my knowledge of him, that Bevan wished to disown his debt to Marxism, so long, of course, as the doctrine was undogmatically interpreted.
If this back-to-school season, talking to your teenager sounds like this. With Boost Mobile, make it sound like this. Come to your Boost store, get a line, and take home a tablet for only $99.99. Perfect for staying connected and studying anywhere. They're happy, and you save. Visit your nearest Boost store. Requires ID verification. New $20 per month tablet plan and $35 device setup fee. Taxes extra.
This is Paige DeSorbo from Giggly Squad. Boost Mobile gives you the same network coverage, speed, and service you're used to, just at a more affordable price. Why pay more if you don't have to? Offering reliable nationwide coverage backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Love your service or get your money back, no questions asked. Visit your nearest Boost Mobile store or head to boostmobile.com to learn more. After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers who cancel within 30 days of activation will have Boost service fees refunded. Activation fees, if applicable, and phone payments will not be refunded.
Hey folks, it's Mark Marin from WTF. Today I want to talk to you about Boost Mobile, offering reliable nationwide coverage backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Love your service or get your money back, no questions asked. Boost Mobile offers the coverage, network speed, and service you're used to, but at more affordable prices. Why pay more if you don't have to? You can get an unlimited plan for $25 a month that will never increase in price, ever. No price hikes, no multi-line requirements, no stress. Visit your nearest Boost Mobile store or find them online at boostmobile.com. After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 per month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
And Irene Bevin, of course, the hero of the Labour Party and founder of the National Health Service. So you have these figures in the Labour Party who their intellectual grounding is in Marxism. People like Nye Bevan, people like Tony Benn, people like Michael Foot, and they are their way of interpreting the world is through a class analysis. Not all socialists, not all people on the left actually have that or utilize that Marxist framework. It's a fallacy to assume that they do, and that they view all history as the history of class struggle and the other kind of aspects of dialectical materialism. Indeed, an interest in Marxism has by no means been confined to the present left of the Labour Party. In this letter published in Tribune, Tony Crossland writes as follows. Tony Crossland was on the kind of centre right of the Labour Party in the 1960s. We conceive the function of Tribune, this Tribune being a socialist newspaper, to be the expression in popular form and to as large as the public and to as large a public as possible of the views of the left and the Marxist wing of social democracy in this country. Its policy must be that of those who believe that the present leadership of the Labour Party is not sufficiently socialist. The contribution made by Marx to social democracy. Here we have another interesting paradox. Tony Crossland, who in some ways Crossland's ideas were inspiration for Tony Blair, and the kind of the Britain he conceived of in the 1990s. And here he is suggesting that the Labour Party, if anything, isn't sufficiently Marxist enough. I mean, that in itself doesn't necessarily translate into what Crossland's later writings and his beliefs. So it's almost as if you have Labour figures who see Marxism as an integral part of the Labour Party. Perhaps it should never be the dominant part of it. That you can't create a sort of like a broad church of moderate and radical left and centre left. However, sometimes Marxist ideas themselves don't get enough of a hearing. It doesn't mean to say you want them to be the kind of the dominant pivot for the party. Now, this is all really kind of, this is like this is like an archaeological dig into the past of the Labour Party, because these kind of ideas within the party now would lead to almost automatic expulsion. and or a severe curtailment of one's career options. And it shows not just how far the Labour Party has moved to the right, but how far the country and our the field of political discourse has moved to the right, as as it would seem kind of unthinkable now for someone from the Labour Party to even say the word Marx. The contribution, certainly Benn writes, the contribution made by Marx to social democracy is widely recognised and admired by those who would not wish to call themselves Marxists. In a letter dated on the 17th of March 1972 to Willy Brandt from Germany and Bruno Kreisky of Austria, Olof Palme, then Prime Minister of Sweden, had this to say: I have always found it difficult to understand why elitist thinkers and supporters of revolutionary violence should regard themselves as standard bearers of a socialist and Marxist tradition which has its roots in Western Europe and Western European humanism. Indeed, though it should not be necessary to have to emphasize this, the role and contribution that Karl Marx has made has been widely recognized by those who would not call themselves socialist at all. For example, in his book A Religion for Agnostics, Professor Nathaniel Micklem, a distinguished congregational preacher and former principal of Mansfield College, writes, though he disguised his moral indignation under the covers of scientific terminology, it was in response to the call of a higher and more lasting justice that Karl Marx repudiated the bourgeois iniquity of his day. It's not only in the West that Marxism is seen as one of the main sources of democratic and socialist philosophy. Marxists have been among the sternest critics of the Soviet control in Eastern Europe. In Czechoslovakia in 1968, the famous Prague Spring was inspired and led by men who declared themselves to be Marxists. For example, in a lecture given by Ivan Svitak at the Charles University of Prague on the 3rd of May 1968, the following passage appeared. Marx was not, is not, and will never be the inventor and theoretician of totalitarian dictatorship as he appears today, when the original meaning of his work, true humanism, has been given a thoroughly Byzantine and Asian twist. Marx strove for a wider humanism than that of the bourgeois democracies that he knew, and for wider civil rights, not for the setting up of the dictatorship of one class and one political party. So, I mean, there you have obviously for Tony Benn, a very sympathetic interpretation of Marx and an empiricist kind of reading of Marxist philosophy. Obviously, I mean, when phenomena such as kind of Marxist-Leninism, ideas such as Marxist-Leninism, led to or contributed to the likelihood of authoritarianism, tyranny, and violence as being integral to the imposition of
Only Boost Mobile.
Boost Mobile.
We'll give you a free year of service.
Free year?
When you buy a new 5G phone.
New 5G phone?
Enough.
But I'm your hype man. When you purchase an eligible device, you get $25 off every month for 12 months with credits totaling 1 year of free service. Taxes extra for the device and service plan. Online only.
This is Paige DeSorbo from Giggly Squad. Boost Mobile gives you the same network coverage, speed, and service you're used to, just at a more affordable price. Why pay more if you don't have to? Offering reliable nationwide coverage backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Love your service or get your money back, no questions asked. Visit your nearest Boost Mobile store or head to boostmobile.com to learn more. After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers who cancel within 30 days of activation will have Boost service fees refunded. Activation fees, if applicable, and phone payments will not be refunded.
The Bolshevik regime. So I'm going to leave you there, but I think that there's a mess of ideas there And I think that the simplistic things that are said about the Labour Party, or have been said about the Labour Party throughout its history and its relationship with Marxism, are clarified in a way by Tony Benn, but they also leave us with lots of kind of unanswered questions too. But what is true, and this is post 2008, I guess, was that Labour's march to the right that had begun under Blair was kind of almost uninhibited up until the point where there is a membership revolt and Corbyn was elected. And the process of removing Corbyn by the Labour right and installing Starmer have meant that the Labour right is now utterly ascendant, and that the other socialist traditions within the Labour Party have been suppressed, and that the Labour Party stands almost now for not a single progressive thought, idea, or sentiment. You have the spectacle of a Labour Prime Minister who currently aping the actions of neo-Nazis, essentially draping Union flags and St. George crosses up and down the country with the express purpose. This is what the extreme right in Britain are doing, with the express purpose of xenophobic, nationalist intimidation of migrant communities. What did Keir Starmer have himself photographed with yesterday? A whole panoply of St. George flags, the flags of England. And his only strategy has been for the last 12 months to legitimize the far right and the kind of the fascist fringe in British society. So the world of the Labour Party as we knew it is long gone, sadly. And the Labour Party that Tony Benn served all his life is no more. And this is why, hopefully, a new insurgent left movement in Great Britain will bring about the kinds of changes that the Labour Party perhaps always should have done. Anyway, more on this later. Take care now. Bye.
Only Boost Mobile.
Boost Mobile.
We'll give you a free year of service.
Free year?
When you buy a new 5G phone.
New 5G phone?
Enough.
But I'm your hype man. When you purchase an eligible device, you get $25 off every month for 12 months with credits totaling 1 year of free service. Taxes extra for the device and service plan. Online only.
This is Paige DeSorbo from Giggly Squad. Boost Mobile gives you the same network coverage, speed, and service you're used to, just at a more affordable price. Why pay more if you don't have to? Offering reliable nationwide coverage backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Love your service or get your money back, no questions asked. Visit your nearest Boost Mobile store or head to boostmobile.com to learn more. After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers who cancel within 30 days of activation will have Boost service fees refunded. Activation fees, if applicable, and phone payments will not be refunded.